My girlfriend told me, I can leave, guys are lining up for me. She thought I'd freak out, but I said, perfect. Door's right there. I cut contact and watched her fall apart when she realized the power shift. For 2 years, I was held hostage by the woman I loved, constantly living under the shadow of her ultimate threat. Every argument, every disagreement, every minor preference was met with the same icy declaration. I can walk away anytime. Boys are begging for me. My name's Blake, I'm 29, and I'm a mechanical engineer living here in Denver. I genuinely thought I'd found forever with Tessa. We met 2 years ago in a bustling downtown coffee shop. She was meticulously photographing her latte for Instagram, and I was instantly captivated by her blend of confidence and creativity. She worked as a freelance social media manager, building online presences for local businesses, though her income was, let's just say, as unpredictable as a Denver snowstorm. After 8 months, we moved into a beautiful downtown loft. I could comfortably afford it on my engineering salary, and for a while, it felt like perfection. But gradually, a chilling pattern began to emerge. Tessa started using the threat of leaving me, of ending us, as her nuclear option. It didn't matter what the disagreement was about. If I chose to spend a Saturday resurrecting my vintage Harley in the garage instead of attending her influencer friend's brunch, or picked a casual eatery over the trendy new spot she wanted to photograph, or even dared to decline expensive concert tickets she planned to post about for content, the outcome was always the same. She'd cross her arms, tilt her head with that practiced pout, and then deliver her chilling signature line, I can walk away anytime. Boys are begging for me. Then, as if on cue, she'd pull out her phone and scroll through Instagram DMs, each one overflowing with fire emojis and marriage proposals from random guys who'd seen her bikini posts. See this, Blake? Hunter wants to take me to Aspen. Preston's offering dinner at that new steakhouse. Kai says he'd treat me like a queen. The routine was identical, chillingly so. She'd show me the messages, watch for the panic to bloom in my eyes, and then, with an almost gracious sigh, she'd allow me to apologize and promise to be more attentive. And for 2 long years, it worked. Every single time. That familiar knot would twist in my stomach. The fear of losing her, the image of her with one of those faceless admirers, would send a cold dread through me, and I'd cave. You're right, babe. Let me cancel my plans. The thing is, I was covering almost everything. The $2,800 monthly rent on our loft, the $200 utilities, groceries that somehow always hit $600 because she only bought organic everything. Plus, her business equipment, a new MacBook, a better camera. She'd contribute sporadically, maybe $800 here, $1,200 there, but she treated it less like her share of adult responsibilities and more like generous gifts bestowed upon me. I didn't mind supporting her dreams, not really. But using my financial support as leverage to manipulate my behavior? That started to wear me thin. Every argument was a replay. Tessa would escalate to threats, I'd back down, desperate to keep her, and she'd get exactly what she wanted. I'd be left feeling smaller, more controlled, suffocated. I was walking on eggshells in my own home, constantly calculating whether my choices would trigger another round of boys are begging for me. But beneath the surface, something was shifting inside me. A quiet, venomous resentment began to build, every time she weaponized other men's attention against my commitment, against me. The worst part wasn't even the threats themselves. It was how casual they'd become. She'd drop, I can walk away, into conversations about what to watch on Netflix or whether we should order pizza. Every preference, every minor decision, suddenly became a potential relationship crisis. She'd learned that threatening to leave was far more effective than actual communication. Blake, you never want to do anything fun anymore, she'd say. Maybe Preston would appreciate going to that art gallery opening. And she'd say this while I was literally planning a weekend trip she'd been wanting to take. But because I suggested we save money by camping instead of staying at a resort, suddenly I was the boring boyfriend who didn't deserve her. I found myself constantly questioning my own judgment. Was I truly inadequate? Too focused on work? Too practical with money? Too boring for someone with her glamorous social media lifestyle? The gaslighting was subtle, insidious, but incredibly effective. She made me feel grateful she stayed, rather than proud she chose me. Meanwhile, her Instagram followers got to see our relationship through carefully curated posts about date nights I'd paid for, vacations I'd funded, and romantic gestures I'd made. All captioned with inspirational quotes about knowing your worth and never settling. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was building her personal brand around relationship advice while privately using emotional manipulation to control mine. But I loved her, or at least I thought I did. I kept telling myself this was just her way of feeling secure. I had no idea how close I was to my breaking point. The breaking point slammed into me on a Saturday morning. I was finally tackling the engine rebuild on my 1987 Harley Sportster. This bike had been sitting in our building's garage workshop for months, calling to me. I'd cleared my entire weekend for it. Ordered all the gaskets, had the cylinders machined, even watched countless YouTube tutorials to make sure I didn't mess up the timing. This wasn't just maintenance. This was therapy. The kind of focused work that cleared my head, reminded me why I became an engineer in the first place. I was 3 hours deep into the teardown, engine parts carefully organized on my workbench, when Tessa stormed in. She was wearing a designer outfit that probably cost more than my motorcycle. "Blake, what the hell? I've been texting you for an hour. We need to leave for Madison's rooftop photo shoot right now." I looked up from the cylinder head, genuinely confused. "Photo shoot? You never mentioned anything about that. I told you yesterday when you were on your laptop." "God, you never listen," she snapped. "This is a huge opportunity. Madison has 50,000 followers, and she's featuring local influencers for this skincare brand collaboration. The lighting is perfect right now, and everyone's already there." She paced my workspace, careful not to get grease on her pristine white jeans, phone in hand, showing me Instagram stories of her friends posing with face masks and champagne. I gestured to the partially disassembled engine, my hands covered in oil. "Tess, I've been planning this rebuild for weeks. I told you I'd be working on the bike this weekend. You can go without me." Her expression shifted. That familiar storm cloud look that meant I was about to get the full treatment. "Are you serious right now? This is my career, Blake. These brand partnerships are how I build my following, and having my boyfriend there shows I'm in a stable relationship. That matters for my image." "Your image will survive one photo shoot without me," I countered, words feeling foreign yet solid. "Besides, look at this." I held up a worn gasket. "If I don't replace this seal, the engine's going to leak oil all over the garage floor. This bike's been waiting months for attention." She crossed her arms, her jaw tight, and then delivered the line. The same line I'd heard countless times before, but this time, it was laced with extra venom. "Fine. You know what? I can walk away anytime, Blake. Boys are begging for me. Hunter's been asking me to be his +1 to gallery openings. Preston wants to take me to that new rooftop bar downtown. Kai literally said he'd drop everything to make me happy." The familiar knot started forming in my stomach as she pulled out her phone, scrolling through DMs. "Look at this. You deserve someone who prioritizes you, beautiful. Any man who doesn't worship you is an idiot. Say the word and I'll pick you up in my Tesla right now." For 2 years, this was the moment I'd panic. This was where I'd imagine losing her, picture her with one of these guys, and immediately cave. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the engine oil on my hands, grounding me in reality. Maybe it was the deep satisfaction of actually working on something tangible instead of navigating another emotional minefield. But I felt this strange, profound calm settle over me. I looked up from my tools, made direct eye contact, and said the words that changed everything. "Great, there's the exit." I pointed towards the garage door with a wrench, then went back to carefully removing the next bolt. The silence that followed was deafening, a vacuum in the garage. I could feel her staring at me, waiting for the usual scramble to apologize, to beg her not to leave. Instead, I continued working methodically, consulting my service manual for the proper torque sequence. What did you just say?" Her voice had gone up an octave, the confident manipulation routine completely derailed. "I said, there's the exit. You keep telling me you can walk away, and boys are begging for you. I'm not stopping you. My tone was completely neutral, like I was reading a parts list. You're really not going to fight for us? For what we have? The desperation creeping into her voice was something I'd never heard before. For the first time in our relationship, I wasn't dancing to her script. Tess, you've threatened to leave me probably 50 times in the past 2 years. Over restaurant choices, weekend plans, what TV shows to watch. I'm tired of being held hostage by the constant threat that you might find someone better. I finally looked up from the engine, my gaze firm. If you want to leave, leave. If you want to stay, stop using other men as weapons against me. But I'm done negotiating for basic respect in my own relationship. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in rapid succession. Shock, anger, panic, calculation, then back to raw anger. Fine. I'll go pack my bags right now. Don't come crawling back when you realize what you lost. She stormed out of the garage, her heels clicking aggressively on the concrete. I heard her car door slam, followed by the squeal of tires as she pulled out of the parking garage. I stood there for a moment, expecting to feel devastated or panicked. Instead, a wave of profound relief washed over me. For the first time in months, the garage was completely quiet. No drama, no threats, no walking on eggshells. Just me, my tools, and a project I actually cared about. I went back to work on the Harley, and for the next 4 hours, I didn't think about Tessa once. Instead of chasing after her or sending the usual apologetic texts, I did something that would have been unthinkable a week earlier. I silenced her notifications and focused on myself. The first thing I noticed was how much mental energy I'd been wasting on her emotional roller coaster. Without constant arguments brewing in the background, I could actually concentrate on work. My supervisor, Dave, even commented on my improved focus during our Monday project review. Blake, whatever you changed this weekend, keep it up. This thermal analysis is the cleanest work you've done all quarter. That evening, I sat down with my laptop and finally created something I'd been avoiding for months: a detailed budget breakdown. The numbers were eye-opening. Our shared expenses totaled $4,200 monthly, $4,200 monthly, $2,800 rent, $200 utilities, $600 for her organic-only groceries, $300 for her business subscriptions and equipment, plus random costs like her gym membership and the premium streaming services she insisted we needed for content research. Tessa's average monthly contribution? Maybe $900, and that was on good months when sponsorships came through. Without her expenses, I'd save over $800 monthly. Money I could invest in my neglected goals instead of funding someone else's Instagram lifestyle. I used that newfound clarity to finally enroll in the Advanced Metallurgy certification course I'd been postponing for over a year. Something that could boost my salary by $15,000 annually. The irony wasn't lost on me that Tessa's dramatic exit had freed up both the money and the mental bandwidth to actually advance my career. By Wednesday, I was sleeping better than I had in months. No more lying awake, wondering if I'd said something wrong or calculating how to avoid triggering another breakup threat. I started using my lunch breaks to reconnect with my workshop buddy, Ryan, who'd been asking me for months to partner with him on custom motorcycle builds. "Dude, where have you been?" Ryan asked when I finally returned his calls. "I've got 3 clients wanting full restorations, and I can't handle the workload alone. There's serious money in this if we do it right." We spent 2 hours discussing the business potential. Vintage bike restoration was booming in Denver, with wealthy collectors paying $5,000 to $15,000 for quality work. Ryan had the paint booth and fabrication skills. I had the mechanical expertise and attention to detail. It was the kind of passion project I'd been too distracted to pursue while managing Tessa's constant drama. Meanwhile, Tessa was clearly struggling with my digital silence. She started with the usual passive-aggressive Instagram stories, inspirational quotes about toxic people and knowing when to walk away, photos of expensive dinners with vague captions about being treated right. But I didn't engage. Didn't like her posts. Didn't even view her stories. For someone whose validation came entirely from social media reactions, my complete digital absence was, apparently, more devastating than any argument we'd ever had. Her posts became increasingly desperate by Thursday. A photo of her crying, mascara streaks visible, captioned, "Sometimes the people closest to you hurt you the most." A mirror selfie with "choosing myself for once," and 3 crying emojis. Then the nuclear option, a story showing her receiving flowers from someone who actually cares, with a close-up of the card signed, "From your secret admirer." I knew her well enough to recognize her own handwrit ing, but I still didn't bite. The lack of reaction was clearly driving her crazy because she started leaving her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter whenever she came by to grab clothes, making sure I could see the flood of DMs from guys responding to her newly single energy. Messages from Hunter, Preston, Kai, and a dozen others offering dates, gifts, and validation. She'd positioned the phone so I couldn't miss seeing conversations about expensive dinners and weekend getaways. 2 months ago, those messages would have sent me into a jealous spiral. Now, I just walked past, made coffee, completely unbothered by her attempts to manufacture jealousy. The transformation in my daily routine was remarkable. I started each morning with a workout instead of scrolling through her social media looking for clues about her mood. My evenings were spent on productive projects, the metallurgy coursework, research for the motorcycle business, or simply reading books I'd been meaning to finish for years. Without the constant background stress of managing Tessa's emotions, I had energy for things that actually mattered to my future. By Friday, exactly 1 week after our garage confrontation, I felt like a completely different person. Calmer, more focused, genuinely excited about my projects. Instead of just trying to avoid the next emotional crisis, I was starting to realize that what I'd mistaken for love might have actually been an addiction to the chaos, mistaking intensity for connection. The person I was becoming without Tessa's manipulation was someone I actually liked. And that realization scared me more than any of her breakup threats ever had. When my silence stretched into the second week, Tessa escalated to full psychological warfare. Her Instagram transformed into a highlight reel of expensive dates and luxury experiences. Each post carefully designed to trigger maximum jealousy. Photos from Ruth's Chris Steakhouse with a mysterious male hand visible across the table, captioned, "Finally being treated like the queen I am." Concert tickets to sold-out shows with "When someone actually listens to your music taste," and heart emojis. The most obvious attempt was a picture from inside what looked like a Tesla Model S with "Some men know how to make a woman feel special," and a tagged location at the city's most expensive shopping district. She was working overtime to prove that walking away from me was the best decision she'd ever made. But the desperation behind each post was painfully obvious to anyone paying attention. The comments from her followers were telling. Lots of fire emojis from thirsty guys, but her actual friends were conspicuously silent. Meanwhile, I was channeling my newfound focus into something that actually mattered. Ryan and I officially launched our motorcycle restoration business that Wednesday, starting with a 1962 Indian Scout that belonged to a collector in Cherry Hills. The owner, Mr. Davidson, was paying us $3,500 to completely rebuild the engine, restore the original paint scheme, and upgrade the electrical system while maintaining period authenticity. It was exactly the kind of challenging, detail-oriented work that reminded me why I loved engineering in the first place. "Your attention to detail is impressive," Mr. Davidson said when we showed him our restoration plan. "Most shops want to rush through projects like this, but you clearly understand the craftsmanship these bikes deserve." The confidence boost was incredible. After months of feeling inadequate because I couldn't match Tessa's expensive lifestyle expectations, I was finally doing work that people valued and respected. Ryan and I were already discussing our next 3 projects, including a 1974 Norton Commando that could net us $4,200 in profit. But Tessa wasn't finished with her performance. Thursday evening, she showed up at the apartment with a guy she introduced as Preston. Tall, wearing an expensive suit, driving a BMW that he'd parked directly in front of the building where I couldn't miss it. "I just need to grab a few more things," she announced, loudly enough for the neighbors to hear, making sure I understood this wasn't a solo visit. She spent 20 minutes collecting items she'd clearly already moved out, dragging Preston through the apartment like she was giving a tour. I was in the garage, deep into the Indian Scout's carburetor when they appeared in the doorway. "This is where Blake spends all his time," she said with obvious disdain. "Just tinkering with old junk instead of enjoying life." Preston, however, looked genuinely interested in the motorcycle. Indian Scout, right? 1962. These are incredible machines. What kind of work are you doing on it? I explained the restoration process while continuing to work, completely unbothered by the obvious attempt at manipulation. Preston asked intelligent questions about the engine modifications and seemed genuinely impressed by the quality of our work. Tessa's face grew increasingly irritated as her date showed more interest in my old junk than in her drama performance. Preston, we should really get going. Our dinner reservation is in 30 minutes. But Preston was examining the bike's frame with genuine appreciation. You know, I've been looking for someone who could restore my grandfather's 1969 Triumph. Would you guys be interested in taking on another project? Ryan and I exchanged glances. Another potential client, and a high-value one based on Preston's obvious wealth. Absolutely, I said, handing him our card. As they left, I heard Tessa trying to explain why Preston shouldn't waste money on Blake's little hobby business, but he was already programming our number into his phone. The irony was perfect. Her attempt to make me jealous had actually brought us a new customer. That weekend, her social media posts took on an increasingly frantic quality. Multiple stories per day featuring different guys, expensive restaurants, designer shopping bags, and captions about living my best life and upgrade complete. But I noticed the comments were drying up, even from her usual validation sources. Her followers were probably getting exhausted by the obvious performance, and her friends were likely getting tired of hearing about her dramatic love life. Meanwhile, I was having the best week I'd had in months. The Indian Scout project was ahead of schedule. The metallurgy course was fascinating, and I'd saved enough money in 2 weeks to make a substantial investment in better tools for the business. Without Tessa's constant financial drain, I could finally see a clear path toward real financial security and professional satisfaction. The transformation was remarkable. I went from feeling like I was constantly failing to meet impossible standards to genuinely excited about my future. And the best part was that it had nothing to do with proving anything to her and everything to do with finally investing in myself. The situation reached peak awkwardness when Tessa dragged me to her parents' 25th anniversary dinner 3 weeks later, clearly planning to use the family gathering as a stage for demonstrating our perfect relationship to her Instagram followers. She'd been posting cryptic stories about family values and real commitment all week, building up to what I assumed would be a carefully curated social media performance. Her parents, Linda and Robert, had always been kind to me, but I could tell something was off from the moment we arrived at their suburban home. Tessa immediately started directing me into posed photos, trying to recreate the couple's content that had made her popular before our relationship imploded. Blake, stand behind me with your arms around my waist. Mom, can you take like 20 shots so I can pick the best one? But my new boundaries made everything feel forced and uncomfortable. When she tried to guide my hands into the perfect position for her photos, I simply stood normally instead of performing for her camera. The difference was subtle but noticeable. I looked like someone tolerating a photo rather than someone genuinely happy to be there. During dinner, her mother, Linda, made an observation that cut right through Tessa's performance. Blake, you seem different tonight. A little distant? Is everything okay with you two? Before I could answer, Tessa launched into a prepared speech about how I'd been going through a difficult phase and becoming emotionally unavailable since starting my new business venture. She painted herself as the supportive girlfriend dealing with a partner who'd stopped prioritizing their relationship. He spends all his time in that garage now, working on motorcycles instead of focusing on us. I've been trying so hard to be understanding, but it's like he doesn't even care about our future together. Her father, Robert, a successful small business owner himself, perked up with interest. Motorcycle restoration, that's a specialized field. How's the business side going? I explained our project pipeline, the profit margins, and our plans for expansion. Robert asked detailed questions about overhead costs, customer acquisition, and long-term growth potential. It was clear he understood business fundamentals and was genuinely impressed by our approach. That sounds like solid entrepreneurship, Blake. Building something from the ground up takes real dedication. The conversation naturally shifted to financial responsibility, And that's when things became incredibly uncomfortable for Tessa. Linda mentioned how proud they were that their daughters had learned to be self-sufficient, and Robert started asking pointed questions about our household arrangements. So, Tessa, how are you contributing to the business expenses? Are you handling the marketing side since that's your expertise? Tessa's face flushed as she struggled to explain that she'd actually been focusing on her own influencer career rather than supporting our shared goals. Well, I've been building my personal brand, which is really important for long-term financial security. Blake handles most of the practical stuff because his engineering salary can cover our basic needs. The silence at the dinner table was deafening, thick with unspoken judgment. Robert and Linda exchanged a look that spoke volumes about their opinion of their daughter's financial arrangements. Her younger sister, Emma, who was visiting from college, chose that moment to drop a bombshell Tessa hadn't expected. Wait, aren't you dating other people now? I saw your Instagram posts from last week. Dinner with like 3 different guys. Those looked like dates, not business meetings. Emma held up her phone, showing one of Tessa's more obvious attempts at making me jealous. This guy Preston took you to that expensive steakhouse, right? And what about Hunter and Kai? Mom, have you seen Tessa's Instagram lately? Linda grabbed Emma's phone and started scrolling through Tessa's recent posts with growing confusion and concern. The expensive dinners, the luxury car photos, the cryptic captions about knowing your worth, and upgrade complete. It all painted a very different picture than the committed relationship Tessa was trying to present at family dinner. Tessa Marie, her mother demanded, using the full name tone that meant serious trouble. These posts make it look like you're single and dating multiple men, but you brought Blake here as your boyfriend. I'm very confused about what your actual relationship status is. Tessa tried to explain that the posts were just content creation and networking, but her parents weren't buying it. Robert asked directly whether we were together or broken up, and why she was posting photos with other men if we were supposedly working through relationship problems. The evening devolved from there, with Tessa becoming increasingly defensive while her family realized that her social media persona was either completely fake or indicative of some serious relationship dysfunction. I sat quietly through most of it, occasionally answering direct questions honestly, but letting Tessa dig her own hole with increasingly implausible explanations. By dessert, it was clear that her manipulation tactics didn't work when there was an audience of people who actually knew her well enough to see through the performance. Her parents were disappointed. Emma was openly confused about her sister's behavior, and Tessa was furious that her carefully planned family validation had backfired completely. The drive home was silent, except for Tessa furiously typing on her phone, probably crafting damage control posts about family drama and being misunderstood. But the real damage was to her credibility. The people whose opinions actually mattered had seen her true character, and no amount of Instagram stories could undo that reality check. After the family dinner disaster, Tessa went completely nuclear. A month of failed manipulation attempts had clearly pushed her to desperation, and she decided to stage the most dramatic exit performance of our entire relationship. I came home from work on a Tuesday to find designer suitcases lined up in our living room like an expensive barricade, and Tessa positioned strategically on the couch with her phone propped up, clearly live streaming to her Instagram followers. She'd transformed the apartment into a set for her final performance, complete with carefully arranged lighting and what looked like a script written on index cards beside her laptop. "Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for this really important live stream," she was saying to her phone, voice trembling with practiced emotion. "I've been getting so many DMs asking about my relationship status, and I think it's time to be completely honest about what I've been going through." I stood in the doorway with my work bag, watching her perform for an audience that couldn't see me yet. She was wearing a white sundress that photographed well and had positioned herself so the expensive luggage was prominently featured in the background, creating the perfect visual narrative of a strong woman choosing herself. Sometimes you realize that you've been settling for someone who doesn't match your energy, your ambitions, or your vision for the future, she continued, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. It's scary to leave comfort and security, but staying in a relationship where you're not valued is scarier than starting over. The comments were pouring in, heart emojis, you deserve better messages, and the usual chorus of male followers offering to treat her right. She was feeding off the validation, growing more confident with each supportive comment. I've been carrying this relationship emotionally and financially for months now, trying to build something with someone who's more interested in old motorcycles than building a real future together. That's when I walked into frame, setting my keys down on the kitchen counter and loosening my tie like any normal Tuesday evening. The shift in her demeanor was immediate, from confident performance mode to deer-in-headlights panic as she realized her dramatic monologue had just been interrupted by reality. "Oh, Blake's home," she said to the camera, her voice suddenly uncertain. The comments exploded with curiosity and demands to see my reaction to her announcement. "Need help loading the car?" I asked casually, gesturing toward the suitcases while heading to the refrigerator. No anger, no pleading, no dramatic confrontation. Just practical problem-solving. Her face went through about 7 different expressions as she tried to process my complete lack of devastation. The live stream audience was eating it up, but not in the way she'd expected. Instead of witnessing her triumphant escape from a toxic relationship, they were watching her boyfriend react to her departure with the emotional intensity of someone helping a neighbor move furniture. That's all you have to say?" she asked, her voice cracking as the confident narrative collapsed in real time. The careful script she'd prepared was useless now that I wasn't following my assigned role as the desperate ex-boyfriend. "What did you expect me to say, Tess? You've been threatening to leave for months. You've been posting photos with other guys for weeks. You clearly don't want to be here, so I'm not going to beg you to stay somewhere you don't want to be." I started making a sandwich, treating her dramatic exit like a normal Tuesday conversation. The live stream comments were brutal now. People calling out the obvious performance, questioning why her boyfriend seemed so unbothered, and speculating about what was really going on in their relationship. Her follower count was probably taking a hit as people realized they were watching manufactured drama rather than authentic emotional content. "But this isn't how this was supposed to go," she stammered, the confident influencer persona completely abandoned. She looked genuinely lost, like an actress who'd forgotten her lines in the middle of a crucial scene. "How was it supposed to go?" I asked, taking a bite of my sandwich and leaning against the counter. "You pack your bags, I fall apart, and beg you to stay. You graciously agree to give me another chance if I promise to change. We've done that dance 50 times, Tessa. I'm tired of it." The silence stretched uncomfortably long for a live stream, broken only by the notification sounds of comments and reactions. She looked at her phone, probably seeing the audience's increasingly critical responses, and I could watch her realize that her grand finale was becoming a public humiliation instead of a triumphant declaration of independence. Finally, she ended the stream abruptly and broke down completely, the manufactured confidence evaporating into genuine panic. "Blake, please. The other guys were just for attention. I don't have anywhere else to go. This is as comfortable as this. I know I've been horrible, but I was just scared of how serious we were getting. Can't we just talk about this?" The admission was everything I'd suspected, but never heard her say directly. She wasn't leaving because she'd found something better. She was leaving because she thought the threat would bring me back under control. "Tessa, here's the thing about threatening to leave. It only works if the other person is afraid of you actually doing it. You've taught me that I'll be fine without you. Better, actually." She spent another hour trying every manipulation tactic in her playbook. Tears, anger, promises to change, threats of self-harm, claims that I was the love of her life. But I'd learned to recognize the performance for what it was, and my responses stayed calm and consistent. She could stay or go, but the relationship where I begged for scraps of respect was over permanently. That night, she packed for real and went to stay with her sister, Emma, sending desperate text messages that I didn't respond to. The apartment felt peaceful for the first time in months, and I realized that calling someone's bluff had finally taught me the difference between love and manipulation. 6 months later, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined during those chaotic years with Tessa. Ryan and I's motorcycle restoration business was absolutely thriving. We had a 3-month waiting list and had been featured in Denver's premier lifestyle magazine as craftsmen reviving America's mechanical heritage. The Indian Scout project had led to 12 more restorations, including Preston's grandfather's 1969 Triumph that netted us $6,800 in profit. We'd expanded from my garage to a proper 2,400 square foot workshop space in an industrial district, complete with a paint booth, parts inventory, and a small office where customers could view our portfolio. I'd completed my metallurgy certification with honors and received a promotion to senior mechanical engineer with a $22,000 salary increase, bringing my annual income to over $110,000. Between my day job and the restoration business, I was making more money than I'd ever dreamed possible while doing work I genuinely loved. More importantly, I'd saved over $8,000 in 6 months without Tessa's financial drain, allowing me to invest in better equipment and even put a down payment on a small house closer to the workshop. The personal changes were even more dramatic than the financial ones. I'd started dating Sarah Mitchell, a fellow engineer who worked in renewable energy systems and shared my passion for precision craftsmanship. She was brilliant, financially independent, and had her own vintage Honda CB750 that she'd restored herself. The kind of woman who appreciated technical expertise and understood the satisfaction of building something with your own hands. We'd met at a motorcycle show where Ryan and I were displaying our award-winning Indian Scout restoration. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours as we discussed engineering principles, vintage bike history, and our mutual love of solving complex mechanical problems. The contrast with Tessa couldn't have been more stark. Sarah insisted on splitting every dinner check, had her own successful career, and never once threatened to leave when we disagreed about weekend plans. She actually enjoyed watching me work on projects and would often bring coffee to the workshop while I was deep into a particularly challenging restoration. "I love watching your mind work through problems," she told me one evening as I troubleshot an electrical issue on a 1973 Norton Commando. "You get this focused intensity that's incredibly attractive." It was the kind of appreciation I'd never experienced with Tessa, who saw my mechanical interests as competition for her attention rather than something that made me uniquely valuable. That's why I was genuinely shocked when Tessa appeared at the Colorado Classic Motorcycle Show on a sunny Saturday in October. Ryan and I had a prominent booth displaying our latest restoration, a 1964 Indian Scout that had taken 4 months to complete and represented our finest work to date. The bike was absolutely stunning, with period-correct paint, a rebuilt engine producing 35% more horsepower than original specifications, and custom leatherwork that perfectly matched the vintage aesthetic. We'd already fielded inquiries from 6 potential customers and had been approached by a journalist from Classic Motorcycle magazine about featuring our work in their next issue. I was explaining our restoration philosophy to a collector when I saw her approaching through the crowd. Tessa looked genuinely different, less filtered, more mature, wearing jeans and a simple blouse instead of the designer outfits she'd always insisted were necessary for her image. Her hair was shorter, more practical, and she wasn't constantly checking her phone or positioning herself for photos. She waited politely until I finished my conversation before approaching, which was completely unlike the attention-demanding person I'd dated for 2 years. "Blake, I hope it's okay that I came over. I saw the magazine article about your business and wanted to congratulate you. This bike is absolutely incredible." Her voice was softer, more genuine than I remembered, without the performative quality that had characterized most of our conversations. "Thanks, Tessa. Ryan and I have been working really hard to build something meaningful." I gestured toward my business partner, who was discussing pricing with another customer. "How have you been?" "Better, actually. I got a job as marketing coordinator for a tech startup downtown. It's challenging work, and I'm learning so much about building actual professional skills instead of just chasing social media metrics." She looked around at our booth setup with what seemed like genuine admiration. "I owe you an apology, Blake. A real one, not the manipulative ones I used to give when I wanted something. Losing you was the wake-up call I needed to grow up and take responsibility for my own life." Before I could respond, Sarah appeared at my side, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing her leather jacket over a vintage band t-shirt. She looked effortlessly cool in the way that comes from genuine confidence rather than carefully curated appearances. "Hey babe, thought you might need caffeine," she said, kissing my cheek naturally before noticing Tessa. "Oh, sorry to interrupt. Sarah, this is Tessa, my ex-girlfriend. Tessa, this is Sarah." The introduction felt surprisingly comfortable, without the awkward tension I'd expected. Sarah extended her hand with a warm smile. "Nice to meet you, Tessa. Blake mentioned you two had some good times before things ended." "All the good times were because of him," Tessa replied, shaking Sarah's hand with obvious sincerity. I was too immature to appreciate what I had. You're lucky to have found him. They chatted briefly about the motorcycle show and restoration work, and I watched Tessa's face as Sarah described her own engineering background and her vintage Honda project. There was no jealousy or competitiveness, just genuine respect for someone who clearly shared my interests and values. I should let you get back to your customers, Tessa said finally. Blake, I'm genuinely happy for you. You deserve someone who appreciates all the things that make you special. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand that. As she walked away, Sarah squeezed my hand. She seems like she's learned a lot. That must feel good, knowing she finally understands what she lost. I watched Tessa disappear into the crowd. No longer the manipulative, entitled person who'd used breakup threats as weapons, but someone who'd clearly done real work on herself. Yeah, it does feel good. But honestly, I'm just grateful she helped me learn what I actually deserve. That evening, Sarah and I celebrated landing 3 new restoration contracts by cooking dinner together at my house, working side by side in comfortable silence punctuated by easy conversation about our respective days. As we cleaned up together, something Tessa had never once volunteered to do, I reflected on how calling someone's bluff had taught me the most important lesson of my adult life. The right person doesn't use love as leverage or threaten to leave when things get difficult. They stay and work through problems together, building something stronger than either could create alone. Sometimes the best response to, "I can walk away," is simply holding the door open and discovering that the person worth keeping would never use that threat in the first place. Have you ever had to call someone's bluff in a relationship, or perhaps been on the other side of that conversation? What did you learn about yourself and what you truly deserve? Let me know in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear your stories.